Official visit season is finally here, and Mick Walker is going to tell us every little detail of it. I'm just Spencer Holbrook. I'm the MC of this event. Mick Walker is going to fill everyone in, including myself, on what in the world is going on. The first official visit weekend is here. I've had my morning cup of coffee. Mick is running high on some energy. Let's go, man. It's official visit season. How are you feeling heading into official visit season? Mick, did you get some rest? Are you ready? Are you do you have like a million Red Bulls in your refrigerator waiting to like juice yourself up for this official visit season? How's it going, man?
We don't need caffeine. We're naturally caffeinated over here at the Walker household, but we're feeling great headed into the summer. I was texting with a few other guys earlier this week. This is the best time of the year. Like just visits coming in, camps coming up, different events coming up there in June and July. Like it doesn't get better when it comes to recruiting coverage than right now. So absolutely pumped to be able to like talk official visits again, write about official visits again, get on the board, $1 for your first 7 days, get in there, talk official visits with us all weekend. What you like, what you don't like, what you think. Give us your hour-by-hour update on where you think these guys are going just because you want to. Like, go ahead and jump in the Lettermen Lounge message board and do that because we'll be in there talking about it all weekend as well.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it all weekend. We've got the Lettermen Row official visit HQ thread over at lettermenrow.com on the Lettermen Lounge message board. You're going to need to go over there. Mick's got links to everything. He's got the full breakdown of everything. It's going to be a good time over there in the Lettermen Lounge message board. We're going to talk about it all weekend. But we're going to start the weekend with talking about this recruiting weekend. You've got a few 5-stars. You've got some offensive linemen. You've got Larry Johnson getting to work on the defensive line. You've got a 4 or 5-star, depending on where you look, linebacker from down south that the Buckeyes are trying to impress. There's a lot to chew on here, Mick. There's a lot to try to get through. We're just gonna. I've come up with some superlatives, not really superlatives, but just some ways that we can talk about this. We are going to start with the most important recruit on campus this weekend. I'm going to give you the floor, let you pick first. I have a feeling where this is going to go. I think it's going to go to Mr. Ojo, but there are other ways that you could do this. Who is your most important recruit who will be officially visiting Ohio State this weekend?
Yeah, you mentioned it. It's got to be 5-star. For me, at least. It's got to be 5-star Mansfield Lake Ridge offensive tackle Felix Ojo, the big Texan. He is the number one target for Ohio State in this class that's uncommitted, regardless of position. Ryan Day has explicitly told him that. Like, they're being very honest with him. He talks to Ryan Day. He talks to Tyler Bone, the new offensive line coach, Brian Hartline, Carlos Lachlan, Keenan Bailey. Like, you go down the list of the coaching staff, Marcus Johnson, Charlie Bickl, the other offensive line coaches. He talks to everybody on the staff that can possibly be in contact with him. And now Ohio State gets the first official visit to kind of set the standard going into the summer. First official visit of the summer, I guess. He visited Florida a couple weeks ago, and I think he went to Colorado maybe like in April or May as well. But he goes to Ohio State this weekend. He goes to Michigan next weekend, Texas the following week, and then wraps it up at OU in these next kind of 4 weeks. And I think that's after all that kind of dust settles, that's when the story ultimately written about where he goes. But he's the number one target on the board for Ohio State, so he's got to be the most important guy for, in my eyes, that's visiting this weekend. But I know you got another guy that could potentially run behind him here in a couple of years if they ended up at Ohio State on your list.
Yeah, I mean, I already made mine pretty clear. I did want to ask you something before I get to mine. Ojo, is this a situation where, like, if he wanted to be committed to Texas already, he would be? Or is this one where he's truly letting it play out, trying to make sure that he's good? I still consider him a Texas lean. I think you do as well. But, like, is this one of those situations, or do you actually think that he's going into this really open and, Texas might, not be able to secure his commitment? Or do you still think that it's like, okay, it's going to be Texas, but he's just making sure that everything is where he wants it to be?
I think he's going into it fairly open. I think if he truly wanted to be committed to Texas, he could have committed earlier. But I think he's always had an affinity towards Ohio State since he camped last summer. Like, this isn't a guy that camped with an offer. He came up, earned an offer, and has since visited a couple of times. He'll be back again this weekend. And this isn't just like, I think everybody's going to talk about 5-star offensive tackle, and we're immediately going to assume like Texas will outbid, Texas will have the highest offer. But he's going to go through his process and deliberately look at things. Like, I imagine he'll spend a ton of time at the Fisher Business School at Ohio State this weekend, really get some ideas on what's going on there. He wants to have the opportunity to potentially play right away, and that's something that could impact him. And then I don't think Ohio State would guarantee him a spot as a true freshman. You can easily kind of point out how Ethan Onion will be gone after this year, and then it's you, Carter Lowe, Deontay Armstrong kind of battling for that left tackle spot. And then again, obviously, money will play a factor in this at some point. Like, for a guy of his caliber, for a guy of his talent, the number one offensive tackle in the country, arguably, Like it'd be silly for him to not try and get some kind of cheddar out of all this deal. So those are kind of the three things that he's considering. But I do think it's kind of a mismatch of like he's still very open about what he's kind of looking at. The options are different for every school. Like I said, business, education. He likes Ethan Onyanwa and Carlo when he visited this spring. Obviously, Ethan Onyanwa has some ties from down in Texas that they're kind of pitching on. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's a host or at least spend some time around Felix this weekend as well. Like he's going into it open, and I think Ohio State's going to have a good plan to try and make it a little less than open, or at least kind of take the leap after this first official visit.
All right. Well, good enough. 5 minutes on Felix Ojo. There we go. I will go with Savion Hiter. Savion Hiter, I already wrote about that over at LettermenRow.com, just how important this is. Here's why. And I'm going to do it more from an Ohio State angle than a Hiter angle. He's down to Ohio State, Tennessee, Georgia, and Michigan, I believe.
Correct.
Yeah. So Michigan and Tennessee seem like they have the upper hand. It looks like Ohio State and Georgia are kind of running co-second there, while Michigan and Tennessee are kind of running co-leaders for now. But this is why I think he's the most important. And I wrote this at lettermenrow.com. Go check that out, please. $1 for your first 7 days. It gets you the full week of recruiting coverage here. Carlos Loughlin stepped into a ready-made running back room last year. James Peoples was already, on campus. Trevin Henderson, Quinshon Judkins were already going to be 1,000-yard rushers. I don't think there's any question about that. They were superstars. Then you had a good footing based on what Ohio State had done on the recruiting trail with other running backs in the 2025 cycle that helped Loughlin kind of get them over the finish line, but he didn't have to start from scratch and do this. This is Carlos Loughlin's first full recruiting cycle at Ohio State, where he gets to develop a relationship with a guy, recruit them, bring them onto campus. He has told us, and I put the quote in that story that I wrote, he is not an elite recruiter. He knows that he's not. He said he's an elite relationship builder. There's a little Hartline in that. If you remember back in 2020, 2021, we started talking to Brian Hartline. Hey, how are you getting all these 5-stars to come? He's like, I'm not recruiting. I'm just talking to guys, building relationships. There's a little bit of that in there. That's not saying that Carlos Loughlin's going to have 8 first-round running backs or whatever the next 5 years, but Carlos Loughlin has not ever earned a commitment from a 5-star running back, ever. Western Kentucky, Oregon, Ohio State. This is, by all accounts, his first ever chance to truly wow a 5-star prospect with a relationship and secure a pledge from them. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to be Savion Hiter. It could be Derek Cooper here in a couple weeks or whenever he officially visits. But with Hiter, this is the first chance Carlos Loughlin has at Ohio State to show, hey, he's a big boy on the trail, one of the best on the trail. He can go against the heavy hitters in NIL like Michigan and Tennessee right now and land a 5-star running back. And if he does that, he secures the long-term future of this running back room that it's going to stay elite under him. If he doesn't land a 5-star, I still think they'll be in good position at running back, but maybe the ceiling's just not as high. So therefore, all of that is to say, it's like I'm a 5th grader doing a presentation on the Wright brothers. This is why the Wright brothers were important. This is why Carlos Loughlin has such a big opportunity this week to make an impression and secure Ohio State's, like I said, long-term future at running back. Does that make sense?
Yeah. In conclusion, that was the part you
in conclusion, yeah.
But I mean, and also if we catch up on a little bit of news from yesterday, Ohio State was kind of the presumed leader for 4-star running back Carson Baker out of Langston. He was down there in Georgia. He abruptly kind of cancels the official visit yesterday afternoon, kind of talking to some sources around Ohio State, around the program, whatnot. It seems like that was a mutual decision. There was just some things on both sides where they decided to go their separate ways. But that still puts Hiter, that puts Favor Akey, who's going to visit next week in the 4-star out of Delaware Hayes High School. And then Derek Cooper, who you mentioned, the 4-star or near 5-star type of running back out of Chaminade Madonna Prep down there in Florida. Those are the only 3 running backs coming up to visit, official visit in June. So I think we all feel pretty confident that Favor Akey will eventually end up in this class for Ohio State, but the Buckeyes want a second, and it's really down to Derek Cooper and Hiter. Hiter's going to be the number 1 target he has been for a while, and they'll get the first kind of crack at him this weekend to see if they can kind of get him in the class or at least position themselves to maybe speed up his timeline and get near the top of his list.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. Like I said, I think Michigan is actually running first in this recruitment. But if anybody knows what they're doing with not landing 5-star running backs when they're supposed to, it's Tony Alford. So, and Ohio State fans know that pretty well. with being in position in March, and that's not a knock on Alford. It's like, but the track record is there of like he put Ohio State in great position through spring and official visit season. And then they get this season, and it's like, hey, I thought we were going to land that 5-star running back, and it was like, well, actually, he's going to go somewhere else. Most notably Bijan Robinson, who was just like basically committed to Ohio State and then wasn't. Alford's a great recruiter because he develops relationships. That's what Carlos Loughlin kind of hangs his hat on too. They kind of hang their hat on the same rack, and they're just opposite sides of Toledo there. And so it's going to be fascinating to watch. But like just because Alford and Michigan are in position right now doesn't mean that Ohio State can't make up that ground. They know how to recruit against Tony because they worked with Tony. And so I think it's really fascinating that Ohio State, Michigan, and a sprinkle of Josh Heupel kind of going after the same guy here. It might be like a heavyweight battle. And Hiter is going to be a really interesting guy to watch. All right, Mick, next category for you. The biggest sleeper here. It's kind of hard to fly under the radar on official visit weekend because they're so selective on who gets to officially visit, especially in June. But there's a few guys in here who, quite frankly, and this might come as a shock to some, but the real ball knowers who follow our website know that I am all team all the time. I don't know some of these guys. Like some of these guys on this list of official visitors, don't know them. So who's the biggest sleeper here that you could see, who is important to you that maybe we're not talking about?
Yeah, I would go Cam Bickl, the 4-star defensive lineman at IMG. He now plays at IMG. He's originally from the Philly area, played at Malvern Prep for the first 3 years of his high school career. Ohio State will actually have another Malvern Prep standout coming up here in a few weeks in Jackson Samuel Ford's the 4-star edge. I think he'll be on campus in 2 weeks. But when we go back to Bickl, this is 6'2", 300 pounds. Like this is a pure nose tackle, one technique defensive lineman that Ohio State looks for every cycle, and typically kind of comes up short or comes up getting a developmental guy. Like Bickl is a guy that's going to play senior season IMG. I think he's going to do well there. And his only other official visit right now is Florida State. Like Penn State's the leader on the on-3 RPM, but Penn State isn't actively recruiting him. He's going to visit Ohio State. He's going to visit Florida State. And honestly, with the way he talked about his spring visit for the spring game on April 12th, the way that I know Ohio State kind of views him, it would not shock me whether it's this weekend or maybe this next week when it kind of happens, or even down in July at some point. Like if Cam Bickl ended up in Ohio State's class as the one technique, the nose tackle type of guy, it would not surprise me at all, just because he seems like the one that nobody's really talking about. But Ohio State's been steadily working, kind of checking the boxes off, because I know there's some motivation, some weight issues early on in his career, but Ohio State seems to have checked through those boxes, worked through them, and now it seems like he's fully rising back up to being a top target for them, and he'll be on campus this weekend.
Do you know who he reminds me of? At 6'2", 310 to 315 pounds, lower rated than everyone else, a guy who was the 64th defensive lineman and the 66th best player in his state for the recruiting class. Bickl was the 73rd best defensive lineman and the 120th best player in his state. He kind of reminds me a little bit of one guy. Do you think you can guess?
Maybe a little bit of Tyleek Williams? No, Tyleek was more really rated.
Yeah, Tyleek was a little higher rated than that. I'm looking at Caden McDonald, and then I turn on, and Bickl is a guy that I know. I turn on Brickl's film. Look at what Caden did in high school, not in college. I think Caden's kind of formed his game to the college level a little bit more. But look at those guys as prospects out of high school, and kind of lower rated, fly under the radar a little bit. But when they get on campus, it's like, whoa, you kind of got a steal here. I think there's a little bit of Caden McDonald in Cameron Bickle's game. What do you think?
I think that's fair, and it's something we talk about every year, whether it's you and I texting or on the message board. Like, if you can find these 300-pound guys in north of the Mason-Dixon line, like, you got to go get him. I know he's at IMG now, but he's a Philly kid, somebody that's from, like, the Big Ten kind of footprint, considering Penn State, Rutgers are kind of have extended it that far out east. Ohio State's done well in that area when it comes to Philly and New Jersey. So when you consider those factors, you consider his size, it seems like a guy that you could pretty easily kind of circle, try and get in this class, especially with a guy like Jameer Perez from Cleveland, Glenville, that committed to Florida a couple weeks ago. I think the Buckeyes are still after him, but if you get a guy like this, you can either slow down off of Perez, or just heck, maybe you take two guys that are 6'3" plus and 300 pounds plus. Like, just get some big beef out up in the middle there if you're going to maybe look at playing more 3-man fronts down there in the future. Yeah,
it's interesting. I've got one. I don't want to sound like maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. Maybe this guy's not flying under the radar. But I really think that I like Aaron Thomas, the 3-star offensive lineman from Mountain Point in Phoenix, Arizona. He's not a highly ranked guy. but he's really athletic. He's, I think, 6'6", right? 275, 280 pounds. Pretty athletic kid. In a recruiting cycle where you're going after the big dogs and Tyler Bowen is trying to solidify himself and rebuild the room in his image, he loves really tall, big, athletic kids. Well, you got 2 of the 3, and then you can just add the big part once he gets on campus. You've already got a kid from Arizona. You've got Paris Johnson out there in Arizona. You've got Justin Fry out there in Arizona. The Ohio State Phoenix kind of pipeline there is a little odd in the way that we could kind of look at it, but also like the kids in Phoenix know who Ohio State is because of Paris Johnson. So, I'm very intrigued by this visit, and I think it could turn into something because here's the deal. Most of the time you say like, okay, you got a 3-star kid coming in at the same time as a 5-star tackle. Okay, well, the 5-star tackle is not going to be afraid of the 3-star kid at all. So it's not going to have any impact on what the 5-star is thinking about his recruitment. But that 3-star offensive tackle is all of a sudden going to get the 5-star pitch because they're going to be in those meeting rooms with the offensive linemen together. And so every pitch that Felix Ojo gets, Aaron Thomas is also going to get. And so I'm actually intrigued by this because I think there's a lot of room for Tyler Bowen to take some projects in this 2026 class. And I think Thomas is a 3-star guy. Probably isn't a project when you look at like an Arizona State, some schools out west, UCLA. But like when it comes down to like Ohio State level, I think he's a little bit more of a project. And I think that there's room for Bowen to kind of put his hands on that guy and mold him. And so watch out. That's a 3-star recruitment that I think could be a little different than a lot of other 3-star recruitments along the offensive line. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's fair. There's a couple different points we can tackle there. First and foremost, like when you talk about like he's an offensive lineman lottery ticket, but like programs like Ohio State, Texas A&M, Texas, and Florida State are the 4 programs he's going to official visit in June, and he already took an official visit to Washington. Like that's 4 top 25 caliber programs. I know Florida State and Washington have had up and down seasons in the past, but like that's 5 legitimate programs that are recruiting Aaron Thomas. So he's not, while he is the lowest ranked guy coming to town this weekend, he's by far not like like there's other guys on this list that are less sought after because Aaron Thomas just has the traits to play left tackle or play right tackle or just play offensive tackle in general. When you already have a guy like Sam Greer committed, you want to get a Felix Ojo. But in general, you just want 3 tackles in this class because you probably only took 1 last year, and ideally you'd like to take 2 every year, right? So you get a guy like Aaron Thomas to pair with Sam Greer. You got guys coming up here in the next couple of weeks that we'll talk about that'll officially visit. So yeah, that makes Aaron Thomas a big need, and I think he's a good pick for kind of the sleeper pick. The other thing that we kind of can add in, you mentioned Justin Fry, you mentioned Paris Johnson, even Josh Fry are out there now, like offensive line ties to the state of Arizona. Charles Bentley, the former Ohio State center, I believe he's also out in that Arizona area, or he at least works out there a little bit. He trains Aaron Thomas now. He's training for the past couple months. I know at times there was maybe a little bit of disconnect on where Ohio State kind of felt with Charles Bentley during the Justin Fry area. I don't know if I believe that's been patched up. I know Charles spent some time here at Ohio State this spring, kind of just spending time with Ryan Day in the offensive line room, Tyler Bowen after he kind of got hired, or right around when Tyler Bowen got hired. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's helping Ohio State in this recruitment as well. Just because Ohio State can get some insight on how he's developing, he can also get some insight from Charles Bentley about Ohio State operates. Like it circles all around there when it comes to Charles and Aaron Thomas, and then like you said, the Arizona ties.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, well then I made a good pick. Let's go.
Yeah, very good pick.
All right. Commit watch. Everybody wants to know who's on commit watch, Mick. Everybody asks it. You're going to get that question 5 or 6 times in the next 3 days based on these official visits. First glance, as much as I, am piecing together what we know about this weekend, I don't see, and it's famous last words of the fool, but that's a great George Strait song, by the way. I don't see a lot of commit watch guys for this first official visit weekend, like who are going to pull the trigger in the next 2 weeks. Am I wrong there, or is this an official visit weekend that's like, hey, you're going to have to really do some legwork if you're going to land a commitment from one of these guys?
Yeah, no, I don't think you're wrong. I have a post-it note right here. I can write down all my articles I'm going to get done throughout the day. One of the articles for Friday will be a 3 most likely to commit to Ohio State that's visiting this weekend. On that list, Bickl, Thomas are the top 2 names. I think we kind of explained why that's possible, especially Bickl when you look at the kind of the limited list he's already working with. And then the third guy on this list, and I don't think he's super likely to end up in the class right now or in the near future, but knowing Keenan Bailey, knowing kind of how this guy operates, he kind of operates slowly in the dark. I think Max Sutter, the 4-star tight end out of Dunlap, Illinois, if he just popped on next Tuesday or popped on like Sunday afternoon, like it wouldn't shock me just because he doesn't say much about his recruitment. But I know Keaton Bailey's been steadily working in there. He's visited Dunlap. He's made several trips out to Dunlap. Max visited Ohio State a handful of times, and I think Mac just in general likes Ohio State. The Buckeyes also kind of pulled the flag of peer recruiting out this weekend because their current tight end commit, Corbin Fordham, will be coming down to campus. He'll be on here just kind of checking it out with Max Sutter. They camped at the same camp last summer on like June 8th or 9th. I forget what the day is, but they were both on campus together working out in the same group. So they have a relationship. They've stayed in contact, and obviously that's why Corbin will be up this weekend to kind of spend more time with Sutter. I think Max already arrived. I have to double check, and Spencer's not a Browns fan either, so this won't really land. But I think Max's father or somebody in Max's family played for the Cleveland Browns. So there's a little bit of tie to the state of Ohio in general. But I think Max spent some time up there working out yesterday based on just what he posted on his Instagram. I think Mac arrived like most guys last night. And then you kind of get with the coaching staff this afternoon after you get breakfast and everything. And then you wrap up your official visit on Sunday. And it would not surprise me at all if Mac was trending towards committing to Ohio State, or Ohio State came out of this weekend as the leader, I guess, for the 4-star tight end.
See, here's the funny thing, though, Mick. I had a pretty high level source, like somebody that I would consider to be in the know of this. And I said, hey, what's going on with tight end recruiting? It's been like dead silent. Because in the spring, like you're hearing every position group, there's nothing but sunshine and sunshine and rainbows, especially coming off the national championship on the recruiting front in the spring. And it was just like radio silent almost for me when it came to tight end. Because, I'm asking about recruiting when I get into some of these guys here. And they said, yeah, like we're pretty good with Corbin. Like, I don't think we need we're not going to take a second one in the class. Well, you're not going to take a second tight end in the class unless somebody like Max Sutter wants in the class, because he's very, very talented. And Ohio State views him as like a 5-star type of tight end. Like, you're not going to take a second tight end unless it's like a bona fide star. And I think if you see Ohio State start to truly like really push for a second tight end in this class, it's because they think that guy could be a star. And so I think that's very notable here. That's fair, right?
Yeah, Mac's been the only tight end on the board for a while. Like, and it's to the extent now where they have Corbin in the class, they have Mac on the board that's officially visiting. And then the next coming weeks, Brock Williams, the number 1 ranked tight end in the 2027 class out of Libertyville, Illinois, he'll be on campus. That's Keenan Bailey's number 1 guy in the 2027 class. He visited for the first time this spring. He's going to visit here in a couple weeks, I believe. Whenever Brady Edmonds, the 2027 quarterback, like whenever he comes to campus, Brock will also be making that drive. And then you got 4-star D'Angelo White out of Clevelandville, Angela St. Joseph, who's also in the 2027 class. He'll be making that trip down here to Columbus. Like Max Sutter and those 2 guys in 2027 are really the 3 primary guys that Keaton Bailey needs to recruit. And then Zach Ferris is another guy at Las Vegas, but spent the majority of his life in Toledo. He's the kind of the 3rd guy in that 27 class, but it all goes to Williams and White, and then maybe Sutter in the 26 class. So that's why it's been so silent, because it's such a small board and such a direct board right now.
Hey, man, Keenan does work on the trail. Keenan Bailey does some work on the trail. He's like a mini Brian Hartline in the sense of like Hartline has the ability to take 4 or 5 guys every cycle. Keenan has to take 1 or 2. And so he's really got to nail those guys, nail the evaluations, nail the recruitments. And right now, he's pretty good at that. So, we'll see what happens there. Mick, any loose ends that we did not cover? I see 2 names down at the bottom of the official visit list that I feel like should be named. In Luke Wafel?
Not Wafel. Yep.
All right. I wanted to say Waffle, but that sounds a little too French for me. And then Xavier Griffin, the linebacker who, by all accounts, is heading to Alabama, but James Laurinaitis has a chance to kind of steer that recruitment a little bit toward Ohio State, even if it looks like it's pretty heavily leaning toward the Tide. What do you think about those 2 guys before we get out of here?
Yeah, I think there's those 2 guys. Xavier Griffin, like you said, he committed to USC really early on. He backed off a couple weeks ago. I think James Laurinaitis was at his house or at the Gainesville High School in the immediate days after that. They've been working on this one for a while. I believe he visited last spring, not this past spring, but the spring before that, 2023, or no, in 2024. Sorry. So they've been working on this one for a little bit over a year, just trying to kind of build the relationship, get in the position. And while Alabama is kind of viewed as the leader, viewed as this team to beat, I think he's originally from the area or close to it. I think Ohio State is going to be in a position to maybe make a major move up in this recruitment because of the relationship, because of how much they want kind of a 3rd elite level linebacker in this class. If you have CJ Sana in the class and you can get Sincere Johnson here in a couple weeks when he commits on June 19th. So that's a big one. Like you said, Luke Wafel is a huge one out of New Jersey. He's probably one of, if not the top 2 defense edge targets for Larry Johnson this cycle with Carter Meadows, who's going to visit here in a couple weeks. Ohio State had a great visit with him their spring. He spent a lot of time with Mark Pantoni on that visit, which I think is notable. Mark Pantoni doesn't spend a lot of time just walking guys around on visits anymore. But Waifel and his family got a lot of time from Mark Pantoni on that trip. He's got his brothers at Penn State right now. He's going to visit Texas and USC. Those are kind of the 3 schools, but I think Ohio State can win that one. A little bit of inside baseball here. I included him in my mock class earlier this week. I think Ohio State could end up pulling Waifel out of New Jersey. And if we just kind of rapid fire 2 more, Jake Cruel at IMG. He's another our defense edge, like top 100 kid. Ohio State's kind of battling Oklahoma for him. I think Ohio State could win that one as well. It's just going to come down to kind of how this official visit goes and how everything goes with him in Oklahoma and some of the other schools he's going to visit. Kari Wilder is the 4th guy I would mention. He's the 4th and final defensive lineman. Ohio State offered him on May 7th. I believe they did an in-home visit with him on May 20th. And now on May 31st, he's going to be on campus, or May 30th, he'll be on campus for an official visit to Ohio State. Just wrapping up real quick with Larry Johnson, Matt Patricia kind of trying to prioritize a guy at 6'4", 250, could kind of play up and down the defensive line. But yeah, those are the main 4 guys we didn't touch on. Brett Colajay is a 4-star offensive lineman that'll also be visiting this weekend. He's got like 8 official visits scheduled in June. He's only visited one other time. I don't really think he's a legitimate guy that could end up in this class like some of the other guys we talked about earlier, but he'll be on campus as well.
Yeah, 8 seems like a lot. What are we doing?
I think he has 5 set already, and he's taken 2. Like I believe it's Florida, Tennessee, USC, Georgia, and somewhere else. And he's already visited Colorado and Oklahoma with Ohio State also on the schedule. So he's going to take like 5, 6, or 7 or 8. He's from Colorado originally, so wouldn't be surprised if the Buffs end up getting in there, one of the Florida schools. But I just don't see that one in particular. And I don't think he's a huge need when you have Tucker Smith and Max Riley. Like Colajay is a guard all the way. So he's not the biggest need, but still, if a guy wants to come to campus like that and you get a chance, take your swing.
I like it. Mick. You're the man with the plan. You know everything about this Ohio State recruiting class and who could be joining this Ohio State recruiting class. The first official visit weekend is upon us. We've already been over it, but you know the drill. Go to lettermenrow.com right now. Get $1, get 7 days. Give $1, get 7 days. It's a give and go here. You give $1 to Lettermen Row, you get 7 days of coverage, and then we'll talk about pricing after that. But you won't regret it because you'll get the full breakdown of the first official visit weekend for Ohio State from Mick Walker and Alex Gleitman. I'm just Spencer Holbrook. We're talking running backs this week at Ohio State or at Lettermen Row. We'll go to wide receivers next week, so it'll be fun. We'll get to talk some Jeremiah Smith, a couple other guys next week. But for now, we're going to keep breaking down the Ohio State running backs at lettermenrow.com. Come join us, please. That'd be great. We would love to have you over there. For now, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's completely free, but still helps us out a great bit. For Mick Walker, I'm just Spencer Holbrook. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Come back soon. We're going to talk about this official visit weekend in a recap capacity. For now, just go to lettermenrow.com.